god.
Oh, what?
Oh my god.
Oh.
You do so much damage on that hero.
Damn!
Oh my.
You want to play?
Bro.
Yeah.
Oh my god, with one. Oh.
Wow.
Big. Huge soldier.
Wingman the hole.
Oh yeah.
That's the good. What do you want me?
This is your brain. This is
Glue.
this is your brain on.
Glue.
Oh, you see that?
Any questions?
Hey, welcome back to Profiles. This time, we have Tjohn, who's not only a great friend who's been helping out with aimmag a lot, he's also recently become the benchmark tester for aimerz. With that in mind, I thought it would be cool to talk to him about some of his thoughts on aim training, and especially recent scene metas. Let's start with the first question. How's it like being a benchmark tester? What exactly goes on in such a position?
Being a benchmark tester is pretty fun, I would have to say. So what goes on exactly is we get a scenario that comes in, and we just have to make sure that A, there is no way to cheat it, so there's no way to change weapons, there's no way to kind of like spam reload, no way that a person could move during the scenario, that they're locked in a certain place. And then after we do that and we test all the ways a person could break a scenario, we then go on and we play 3 runs of it, or three or 5 runs depending on the person, and we give our scores, and then we try to see what a good score would look like for a benchmark. And so we kind of see like, okay, like what do we need to nerf, what do we need to improve on, what needs to be buffed, and yeah, so that's what it goes on pretty much being a benchmark tester.
So, with the testing, what do you think about the aimerz benchmarks currently? What can be improved?
So my thoughts on the aimerz benchmarks currently are that they're pretty good. I like them a lot, and I think what can be improved is already happening in Season 2. There's not much that I can say because a lot of it is under wraps. We're still working very hard and diligently on the second season of benchmarks, but from the stuff that I've seen and I've been able to test, I really like it a lot. Stuff that I think is really challenging, really fun, and I think the community will like it as well.
And speaking of benchmarks, Vortex benchmarks have been by far the most successful ones in the scene, seen as perhaps the gold standard. But in the community, there seems to be quite a big split between Season 3 and Season 4 of the benchmarks. What are your thoughts on this divide?
So I think this divide comes from two different changes in how two different scenario like sections or two different task sections work. So the first one would be the change in speed cooking scenarios. So before you would have 6-sphere hip fire will take, and that was kind of like your speed cook scenario. And you would also have like wide wall 3 targets and one wall 5 targets, I think. That was your cooking scenarios before. Now you just have one wall 5 targets and multi-click. And multi-click is your new speed cook scenario. And I think a lot of people don't like multi-click. Maybe because it's different and new, or maybe because it's not like 6-sphere hip fire will take like they used to play. And maybe they think that there's a better scenario that they could have used other than multi-click. And the second reason why I think there's a divide between Season 3 and Season 4 is how the reactive tracking benchmarks work. So before it was time-based scoring, where you would have to kill the certain number of bots, I believe it was 6 or 7 amount of bots, as quickly as possible. And people really liked that because it gave you a motivation to grind out these scenarios, to grind out those certain bots that you're having trouble with, to help improve your time. And now you have 1 minute 20 seconds, and the bot dies on its own, and it turns a bit more accuracy based, in a sense where you're not more so accuracy based, but more so like trying to understand and trying to just how overall good run. I think people preferred the speed aspect of the older reactive tracking benchmarks more than the new reactive tracking benchmarks. Obviously I can't say much because I'm still kind of very new to the whole scene, but I think that's why there's a pretty big divide between Season 3 and Season 4.
From my time in the scene and following the progression, there seems to be a continuous trend for scenes to get more difficult, especially for tracking. There seems to be a divide between players choosing slow, easier reactive scenes like aimerz, and fast and hard to read scenarios. What are your thoughts on this trend?
I think having this divide, in a weird sense, is a good thing. Because when you have slower, easier to read bots for reactive tracking, I think that's where you're able to have people improve on their fundamentals, improve on the basics of like, okay, what do I need to really hammer down, like what do I need to work on the most when I'm playing these reactive tracking scenarios, right? Like I will always play the novice versions of benchmarks, sometimes especially for the will take ones. I will grind out the novice version just to improve my fundamentals and just to like get that under wraps, right? Just to be okay, like this is what I need to improve on, and I can do that, and I can focus it at a better rate in the novice benchmarks. For some people, they prefer to play the harder benchmarks or the harder scenarios to see what they need to improve on, right? And that's completely fine. I think having this divide is actually a good thing because you give people more options and what works best for them, and for people to find out what works best for them.
Also, I know you're a member of Glue Clan, so I'm sure you're familiar with LG Duos and its potential for improvements in strafing and strafe aiming. Contrast that with the movement scenarios on Kovacs. Do you think the two are comparable, or do LG Duos blow strafe scenes out of the water?
I think LG Duos blow strafe scenarios out of the water because a lot of the times the bot there isn't like shooting back at you, so you kind of don't get this feedback of like, hey, you know, like what can I improve on? When it comes to LG duels, you are fighting another person, and that other person has different goals than you do, and that other person knows what you want in a sense, and then you know what they want. So it kind of becomes this this like onion, right, where you're peeling back the layers of like, okay, how can I get to this? Okay, he's doing this, let me try this, or I'm gonna do this and see how he reacts to that, or see how this person reacts to that. So I think when it comes to like strafe scenarios, I think they're fine if you don't know hand interdependence, right? If you don't know how to move and shoot. But I think after that, if you want to improve your strafing, I would suggest playing LG duels.
Lastly, any hot takes you want to share with the community?
Yeah, I have a couple, but I think the biggest two are that I think everyone should suffer with me on 75 hertz. I think it'd be funny if everyone played on 75 hertz. I'm serious. I think it'd be pretty funny. But no, if you have the ability to play on 144 or 240, do it. Don't go back to 75 or 60. You're not gonna have fun. But I think the biggest hot take that I would have is to stop using the same kind of song, the same genre of song in your montage, in your aim highlights, your montage, whatever it may be. I think it's overplayed. I hear the same breakcore song like 20 times over. I hear the same Tokyo Pill song 20 times over. No one else is really, besides Udoki, no one else, or like Udoki or like Fishy or Mythos or the people that I've talked to that I know, like everyone else is kind of doing the same thing, and they're kind of in the same pattern. It's hard to, differentiate. Like I'll have to look at now it's just this person's skill, and while that's fine, I think the song aspect and the song choice aspect is really important. Don't just throw the same song you've heard 20 times over again for your montage, because there might be something that's even better out there for you. Obviously it's easy because if it works for one person, it's probably gonna work for another, right? That makes sense. But I say go out and experiment. Why not try that random weird song? Have your aim highlight to Dracula Flow 3. Do it. See what happens. I think it'd be funny. I think it'd be great.
Hey, welcome back to Hardware Review. This time, we're taking a look at the Artisan Raiden, one of the most popular cloth speed pads preferred by some of the best aimers in the scene, namely Maddie, who mains the pad and used it at LAN, and Clover, who said it was the best tracking pad. With the pad being so popular, there are already a lot of reviews on the pad from different channels. So, I wanted to provide a different perspective with my review, looking at the pad from the perspective of a glass pad main. Let's start out with the unboxing and the specs. I bought this pad a couple of months ago, so I don't have the footage of the packaging. However, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Artisan's packaging. For those that don't know, all Artisan pads come in a big, hard cardboard box, ensuring that nothing gets folded or rolled up during transportation. So obviously, the pad comes out of the box perfectly flat. The pad measures at 490 by 420 by 3mm, and I have the mid version here. Build quality is fantastic. The pawn base sticks to my desk like glue, almost to the point where I have to rip it off my desk to go between this and my SkyPad. The stitching on the sides is lower than the surface of the pad as expected, and is unnoticeable in game. Compared to the piece of sandpaper that is the Hien, the surface itself is extremely smooth, much smoother than what you would expect out of a speed pad or even a cloth pad. The pad is also not affected by humidity, so overall the pad is very comfortable to use. Now the main point, the performance. How does it measure up to my SkyPad? The main comparison here would be the speed, and the answer is complicated. When tracking, the speed is right up there with my SkyPad, being ever so slightly slower. However, when I have to stop and readjust my aim, or when I'm playing non-tracking scenarios, the static friction is noticeably higher than a hard pad. Therefore, when I was testing the pad, there was a slight learning curve, having to get used to a higher static friction. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, the static friction was still very low, much lower than the also soft that I have. The main difference when compared to a glass pad is when you go from one to another, there are things that you gain and things that you lose. Let's start with what you gain going back to cloth. The main thing would be being able to press down into the pad. On cloth pads, you can often press down to increase the friction, and therefore stop faster. This is a factor of control that I simply don't have on the SkyPad. While this isn't a massive change, this is something that cloth pad users often do, even if they're not doing it knowingly. I also don't have to swap out my mouse gates every 2 months, don't have to worry about dust or hair on the pad potentially destroying those gates, not having to use a sleeve, and for desktop use, a cloth pad is simply better. It's a lot easier to live with a cloth pad compared to glass. However, going back to cloth also means that you will have to wash the pad, which is annoying, and more importantly, the pad will eventually wear out and develop a slow spot, making the switch to a new pad necessary. To put the comparison between the raiden and hard pads in simple terms, the fact is that it's just a lot easier to get used to a raiden compared to a hard pad. I like my hard pads and I've made the choice already, but I won't deny that hard pads are much harder to get into, whether in terms of price or in terms of learning how to play with one. The raiden to me feels like the speed limit to most players. Going faster would require going to hard pads or hybrid pads, which suffers from their own host of problems, mostly related to durability. And let's also admit that hard pads aren't cheap. A raiden costs a lot less, and the competitors to the raiden itself is even cheaper. Overall, the raiden is a safe choice for people who want speed. While this pad, as good as it is, isn't going to make me switch back to cloth pads. I believe this is a good option for those that want a faster pad, without the trouble of learning how to play on glass. Assuming you buy the pad off Artisan's website, the price changes a lot based on where you live due to shipping costs, but usually it's very much on the more premium side. With the rest of the industry catching up big time with Artisan and seeing the amount of Hien and Zero clones out there already, it's not crazy to expect the raiden to get its fair share of clones in the future. Right now, you just have pads like the NPC 450 or the Kuro Sun Ninja. Right now, the competition is somewhat limited, but I think it's going to change in the future. So the question I have is that, will this pad be worth it 6 months down the line? Welcome to Industry News. Once again, we have a lot to cover this month, so let's start off with mice. Razer has come out with the Razer Viper V3 Hyperspeed. Once again, they have not delivered the Razer Viper Mini Ultimate that people have been asking for, and instead have dropped a mouse that uses a single AA battery and weighs 82 grams. However, according to Botsy, you could get it to 70 grams with a AAA battery and a converter, making it not as much as a brick. Weight aside, it features Razer's Focus Pro 30K and supports 4K polling. Interestingly, the mouse is priced quite competitively, starting at $70 for the mouse and a bundle with a 4K dongle at $85. And speaking of 4K dongles, Pulsar has come out with theirs, available for $20. Lethal Gaming Gear has announced a delay on their highly anticipated LA1, citing problems with QC. Their Twitter claims that there's flex where the sides meet the base, and as of the 26th, the issue is still yet to be fixed. Unfortunate delays, but the transparency and effort towards QC is very respectable. Pictures of the Fantech Helios 2 Pro were posted to Reddit in a now deleted post. OP claims it is 50-ish grams, supports 4K polling, has an updated coating, and the shape seems to be similar to the XT3. Pictures showed a black and yellow and a grey and yellow colorway. And now, a quick fire round to finish off the news. Lamsu came out with the Fawn 4K Special Edition, a collab with Fnatic at $100. The Loose has announced an Ergo shape and a mini shape is in production, with the mini shape being potentially based off the M800, their Viper clone. Mouse has delayed the shipping dates of their ULX, pushing back to mid-October. Anyone surprised? Pulsar has posted a teaser for the ES line of mice, with more information coming in November. From previous trailers, the key feature of this line would be an OLED screen directly on the mouse, displaying battery life, DPI and polling rate, and support for 4K wireless polling and 8K wired polling. And lastly, we have the Era 1, from a new company called Ferrivs, with an insanely forward sensor position that you won't find anywhere else. An interesting release for sure. Now, onto mousepads. Sprint Gaming Gear, a new company, has announced a $50 glass pad, coming in 490 by 420 by 3mm. A very competitive price in the hardpad space where pads usually start at $90. And speaking of glass pads, Asus showed off theirs, the Moonstone Ace at the recent Tokyo Game Show. Fnatic also showed off the Dash V2, using a Poron base with a new surface. The Whale is teasing a new speed pad, using what he claims to be woven silicon. If this is true, this would be the first pad to use such a fabric. Very interesting, and he claims the pad is already in production. However, knowing his track record, we advise the audience to take this with a grain of salt. Lastly, we also have pictures of a new Artisan surface, the Rokaku, as part of their replaceable surfaces prototype we saw last month, with two variants, the Rokaku Yura and the Rokaku Speed. Next, keyboards. A lot of brands are coming out with their wooden competitor, it seems. Let's go over them one by one. First, we have the hype brand High Ground releasing the Performance 65. It uses the Gateron KS37 Hall effect switches, allowing for an actuation ranging from 0.1 to 4mm, and of course, rapid trigger. For reference, Gateron also produced the switches on the highly popular Wooting 60HE. AIM clan Yuki-Aim also came out with a 65% keyboard, named the Yuki-Aim Katana. It also features switches from Gateron, but a special version called a Crimson Magnetic Switch, which seems to use lighter springs and has a lower actuation range from 0.1 to 3.8mm. Razer came out with their Huntsman VV Pro line, with a full-size TKL and a 60%. However, instead of using Gateron switches like the other brands, they are using a new generation of their own analog switches, which also supports rapid trigger, with an adjustable actuation ranging from 0.1 to 4mm. Whether or not it can compete with Gateron is yet to be seen. And there's more to come, with Fnatic and DynamoShock both confirming rapid trigger keyboards coming down the line. In addition to Drunk D keyboards getting more hype, the market competition is getting very intense. Wooding, the brand that put rapid trigger on the map, has come out on Twitter explaining the progress on their 75%, after LG56 has asked them for a progress update for 75 days in a row. They cite high scrutiny during development and the goal of innovation being the reason for the delay. They say more information will be available in November, and more importantly that there is a juicy new feature with the board. Meanwhile, Logitech has released the G Pro X TKL Lightspeed, still using mechanical switches and therefore no rapid trigger. It seems that their dedication to being years behind industry trends is still going strong. Now onto miscellaneous news. Asus has dropped a 540Hz 24-inch 1080p TN panel with support for UMB2, and according to Optimum Tech, it is just as good as you think. It is not released yet, but will be available for a staggering $900. During the Tokyo Game Show, Xiaomi came out with the new version of Diag. However, more information is unavailable at this time. GPX2 users rejoice. Corepass has released skates for the new mouse, allowing all of us to ditch the terrible stock skates. And on the subject of skates, Esports Tiger has come out with what they call the Q skate, designed for glass pads with the goal of reducing scratching and noise. And lastly, instead of working on a Viper Mini wireless, Razer has decided to collab with Dolce & Gabbana on clothing, Lamborghini on a laptop, and Glad on a Razer. And that's all of the industry news for September 2023. Are you tired of slow mud pads and not being able to move your mouse? Do you hate it when you live like an absolute slob and must face the consequences of not washing your pads? Do you just wish you could eat at your desk? Introducing SkyPad. It's a slab of gaming glass that just works. It's so fast you basically move your mouse on accident. You live like a pig, it doesn't complain. Just wipe it off and it's just as new. Washing your pads like a medieval peasant sitting by the river? Not a thing anymore. How much would you pay for this basically alien technology? $5 quadrillion? Your soul? The life of a loved one? If you act right now, you can get this magnificent piece of gaming peripheral for only $120. But wait, there's more. If you use code DOKI right now, you get 10% off. So, what are you waiting for? Order now. Batteries sold separately and in-games not guaranteed. Hi, welcome back to the Record Books. Once again, we have a lot of great scores this month to share with you all. Let's start off with perhaps the score of the month, Maddie 620 on Popcorn Forte. Absolutely unreal score, and I still remember when Gref set a 460 on this scene and people thought he was cheating. Crazy to think how far we have come. Other than that, he also set a 1203 on R8 XY Click 20% smaller. And lastly, he has also become the first person to hit 1800 votes on the Season 3 leaderboards. Once again, an incredible achievement. Next, we have Flavo with a 1080 on Bounce TS, a world record by almost 3 kills. Then we have Clover with a 9900 on air, this time on air for Tig with a 900.1. He also set a 3901 on VT Air Defense, a record by almost 250 points. Next, we have Draco with a 183.25 on Fox TS Voltaic Jumbo. Fantasy has set a 124.7 on Pasu Voltaic. While it is not a world record as Maddie has a 135, this is still a great score, making him the second person to break the 120 barrier on this scene. We then have Robbie with a 146.1 on Fox TS Voltaic. Then we have Doc with a 9300 on Pad TSNR. And lastly, we have Lucy with a 263 on Jumbo Tower Frenzy, beating the previous record that they hold by 1. And that's all for the record books for September 2023. Once again, all the scores are in the description below.
Damn, he hit that. Has to be Doki. Maybe Doki's just an aim guide. There's actually people that cheat on 1v1 servers, and it's the funniest thing.
Hey yo, first things first, it's time to shake ground in the 8th round. Box battle will break down.